Please welcome the President of the United States, Joe Biden.
Doctor, thank you very, very much. It's very gracious of you. I appreciate it. And the U.S. Fire Administration is doing a great job. Look, I want to take this opportunity to thank you all for an opportunity to speak at the summit. And it's wonderful to see so many good friends, you know, sitting out there looking Ed Kelly, and I think President Black is there, Kevin. I hope, I can't quite see what I can't see in the front there, I think. And I actually wish I could be there with you in person. You know, I mean it. You know, and I've had to pay respects with you this past weekend on the National Fallen Firefighters Memorial. 30 years ago, God, it seems like 30 years ago. 30 years ago, I was the original co-sponsor with Paul Sarbanes and others of the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation Act. And over the years, I've spoken at too many funerals for fallen firefighters. From the national events like the Memorial of the Arizona 19 Hot Shots in 2013 to the individuals in my home state that unfortunately are too numerous to name. And each one of you is a hero to the community. You've touched people's lives. So I'd like to take a moment at the top here to honor the lives we've lost of those the past 2 years, including from COVID, 135 on-duty firefighters in 2021, another 77 to date in 2022. And it's an acute reminder of the risk firefighters bear, and quite frankly, their bravery. You're the only ones who run toward flames and not away from them when that fire bell rings. And you look, you know, many of you heard me say before, first God made man, then he made a few firefighters. God made man, then he made a few firefighters. I grew up in Claymont, Delaware, and I went to a little school called Holy Rosary Grade School across from the Claymont Fire Hall. And all my buddies, either became a firefighter, a cop, or a priest. I wasn't qualified for any of them, so here I am. But, you know, it's truly amazing that an estimated 1,041,200 local and municipal firefighters, 65% of you are volunteers. And I'm proud to say in Delaware, my home state, it's 98.3% of all firefighters are volunteer firefighters. And by the way, I know you're all having trouble keeping, because of COVID and because of the schedules people have these days, attracting enough volunteers to man all the stations. You're the heart of the community. You know, people don't appreciate you until they need you, but then they do, and you're always there. Firefighters have saved my life and the life of my family. I want to just tell you for a moment, I know a lot of you know, if anyone's from Delaware there knows, you know, way back in 1972, before I got sworn in, my family, my wife was Christmas shopping with my 3 children, and a tractor trailer, they got in an accident, broadsided and killed my wife, killed my daughter, and my 2 boys, who were then almost 3 and almost 4, were on top of their dead sister and mother. And it took the jaws of life from my local fire department, volunteers, to get them out and get them to the hospital. And they saved their lives. In addition to that, what happened was I was doing Meet the Press, and lightning struck a little pond behind my house, came up through the ground into the air conditioning system, ended up generating thick black smoke, literally that of those proportions. And from the basement to the 3rd floor, the attic, everything was ruined. And the kitchen floor, we almost lost a couple firefighters, they tell me, because the kitchen floor was the burning between the beams in the house, in addition to almost collapsed into the basement. And then I got rushed to the hospital for turned out to be almost a 9-hour operation with a cranial aneurysm in the middle of a snowstorm by my fire company. They got me down, they saved my life. And so I owe you, and so many other Americans owe you as well, so many families. The only thing that saves lives of a firefighter are more firefighters. The only thing that saves lives of a firefighter are more firefighters. That's why as a senator and when I was out of office, and then back as president. We do everything we can to support and pay for firefighters, more firefighters. You know, and you're there for most people who've just lost everything. And by the way, again, to ad lib a second here, you know, you're also, what people don't realize, you're the same folks who are there holding the boot in the corner to raise money for the people who just lost their home. Not a joke. That's what you do. That's what you do. You're the ones who line the Little League fields. You're the one, you're just, anyway, you're an incredible group of individuals. You know, in Delaware, we used to say back when I first started running as a kid, and say there's three parties in Delaware: Democrats, Republicans, and firefighters. And thank God I had the firefighters. I just got off with the president of the Delaware Volunteer Fire Company, who said, "Joe, do you remember I was in your first campaign in 1972? Anyway, you're on the front lines for emergencies and disasters all across this great nation. From the devastating wildfires in the West to the thousands of fires that local firefighters respond to every day, and response to Hurricane Ian in Southwest Florida." And by the way, I point out that I've flown over, just this last 18 months, flown over most of the major fires in the West. More timber, more housing has burnt to the ground than all of the land mass in the state of New Jersey. That's how much has been lost. And, you know, I went down to Florida to seek a response last week. Firefighters helped rescue thousands of survivors. And they answered the call, not just for fires, just answered the call. And in some cases, their own homes and firehouses were damaged, destroyed, or washed away. Because that's who you are. When tragedy strikes, you suit up. And when the impacts of climate change are becoming increasingly evident, we're calling on you more and more and more. Extreme heat and prolonged drought have turned wildfire season into wildfire years. And local firefighters are being called in more to respond to the fires in the wildland-urban interface, where we're moving out into the forest areas to develop, and it becomes local and federal. So I want you to know that my administration is doing everything we can to make sure you have the resources you need to do your job as safely and effectively and efficiently as possible. You know, we invested $350 billion in the American Rescue Plan to help states and cities keep first responders on the job, including firefighters, on the job during COVID-19. And between the American Rescue Plan and my 2023 budget request, we've increased federal firefighting grants by $320 million, which includes money to fund 1,200 more local firefighters in the field, hundreds more emergency response vehicles, and thousands of sets of turnout gear. A pioneer in research on issues including like cancer prevention. You know, it's close to my heart. Cancer is a leading killer of firefighters. Toxic substances you've been exposed to as part of your job are almost certainly connected to those cancer diagnoses. And we're going to do something about it. The Cancer Moonshot is bringing together every part of a government to cut cancer death rates in half and to end cancer as we know it, including by addressing environmental and toxic exposures to prevent cancer. We just passed national legislation to deal with the burn pits in Afghanistan and Iraq, and that so many of our soldiers, we finally got it passed so that we can care for their families if they've lost their lives, or care for them, in fact, if they're going through this. We created a special claims unit at the Department of Labor to ensure that they are processing federal firefighters' cancer claims quickly. And we're also taking PFAS, the so-called forever chemicals that for years have been in your gear, your equipment, and the suppression agents that you depend on to do your job. I'm absolutely determined to make sure you have the gear that protects you without making you or your family sick. And I'm urging Congress to send to my desk the Federal Firefighters Fairness Act. Let me say it again, the Federal Firefighters Fairness Act, which are going to help federal firefighters and their families assess critical worker compensation resources, including making sure that several forms of cancer are presumed to be caused by the firefighter's job. And I'm also I'm also proud that last November I signed into law Protecting America's First Responders Act, which extends the benefits under the Public Safety Officers Death Benefits Program to the families of firefighters killed in training and made it easier to qualify for permanent disability. The final point, I'm sorry to go on so long, but I feel passionately about this. The final point I'd like to make today is that we're doing everything we can to ease the burden on our firefighters by preventing fires. This is the 100th, hard to believe, it's the 100th anniversary of Fire Prevention Week. And the landmark legislation I've signed into law includes historic investments to reduce the risk of fire. The bipartisan infrastructure law includes significant forest management increases, community resilience to wildfires, and harnesses new technologies to keep communities safe. It's also repairing vital infrastructure that firefighters and other first responders rely on to quickly get to those in need. By the way, we're talking about all the bridges that are in tough shape. I was out in western Pennsylvania. There was a fire station, a bridge over a creek, and a school not far from there. They have to go, I think it was 7 miles. They couldn't go across the bridge because it wasn't strong enough to maintain and handle the fire truck. You know, the Inflation Reduction Act enables us to take unprecedented steps to confront climate crisis, which is going to protect forest health, reduce fire risk, and supercharge our clean energy future. We're also maximizing protections for people when fires do break out through a national initiative to help states, local, and tribal and territorial governments adapt and adopt the most up-to-date building codes that reflect the threats from climate change. We're using the Department of Defense satellite imagery to detect wildfires in their early stages, so firefighters have a better chance to suppress the fires early before they can impact on local communities. And we're working to help educate the public on basic fire safety, like preparing fire escape plans, testing smoke and carbon monoxide and alarms monthly, and replacing those alarms every 10 years. This is simple steps we can take to save lives. Look, on behalf of my own family and every American, I just want to close this saying again, thank you, thank you, thank you. Fires will always be a fact of human life. And when the worst happens, when those alarms go off, when everything and everybody you love is in danger, there's no better sight in the world than that firefighter who's ready to go to work. So thank you for being who you are. Thank you for all the heroes you represent. You are on the alert and on call in communities all across this country right now as I speak. So God bless you all, and may God protect our firefighters. Thank you for letting me have a chance to talk to you. I literally do wish I were there with you. Thank you. And thank you, Lori.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you.